Milton Scott Jr. and Andrea Grant never got the chance to know their father.
Toughest day in my life happened before I was ever born.
On July 18, 1973, Milton Scott was shot and killed by an FBI agent outside his home in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He was mistakenly thought to be an Army deserter. This loss due to a clash between a Black American and law enforcement is one that has been repeatedly seen in recent years. Even with justice or monetary compensation, the pain remains for families who have to live without their loved one for decades.
And he was about 21 years old. That was the hurting part.
Scott's wife, Beverly Shabazz, was left alone to care for her 2-year-old daughter, Andrea, and a baby on the way.
It was a while before I could adjust to the situation. I was getting a little text for both my children from Social Security, and in that sense.
On the other side, FBI agents William B. Wood and Delbert Hahn had their own struggles with that day.
I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy Milton and Scott is dead. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sorry for her and the family. I understand that, and I understand they don't like me. It doesn't bother me. I don't expect them to. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel the same way if somebody shot my husband, my father.
20 years later, Wood would invite Hahn to his post-traumatic stress course at Quantico.
He said it might do you some good.
Hahn learned a few things, but what stuck out to him was that he wished there was more time before things escalated at Scott's home. Both sides experienced added pain to the loss of Scott's life when confirmation of a mistaken identity came hours later. But the FBI Identification Division had stopped doing routine fingerprint checks due to a high number of deserted cases and limited resources. The absence of this policy would show its consequences when the fingerprints between Scott and what was on file did not match. The prints belonged to a man named Calvin Wallace, who was involved with drugs and other questionable activities. Wallace had enlisted in the Army in Scott's name, and then went AWOL. Both sides would agree 50 years later that this incident could have been avoided.
So much of this could have been prevented with them just doing their homework before they showed up at my parents' door.
I agree with her lawyer, Dennis Whalen, that the Bureau should have done that. Mm-hmm. Because, it became personal to me. They stuck me in a position where something awful happened, and they didn't have to do that. They could have done it the right way.
The case was presented before a grand jury, and one of the members, George Kilcrease, says the agent shot in self-defense.
Other facts in the case led the jury to conclude that they acted reasonably and reasonable force.
One of the facts would include a sanitation worker's statement, which said, "I heard what sounded like a woman scream, and I looked up and I saw a colored man come off the steps of the house on the west side of Alaska Street. He was pushing 2 white men." Looking back, Kilcrease believes the jury's decision was accurate, but recognizes the loss of Scott's life.
If things would have transpired differently, I think it has a different outcome.
What he should have done is come out and say, I've never been in the Army. And then that would have started a whole different procedure because it's happened before.
In civil court, Shabazz's lawsuit against the federal government and the agents was ultimately dismissed in 1975. The judge had written that her attorneys continued to give the impression that the FBI agents in this case shot the wrong man, which is not so. The judge also noted that the FBI agents did not shoot Scott because he was an Army deserter, but because he physically attacked and attempted to destroy 2 FBI agents. Shabazz would have several attorneys over the years, but none would build a case that was successful in advocating for Scott's death.
It was really hard because most of the ones that I would try to get in contact with, they were just scared to take the case. They said it was too hot for them to handle.
Not only did Scott's story find challenges in the legal landscape, but his children Andrea Grant and Milton Scott Jr. struggled to find peers who would understand their loss.
When I did get older, and I shared the story maybe in high school with a couple of friends of mine, it was just that they couldn't believe it.
So then it became a thing. Well, if your dad was killed before you were born, then you wouldn't be here. How would you be born? How were you made? And I'm like, well, I could, as a kid, I didn't know how to explain that. And it became more of a mockery, and they didn't believe me, and they thought I was trying to come up with extreme stories.
Scott's children would learn more about him through 9 photos and the memories of others. But just Scott's presence is what Shabazz misses the most.
And to see his children grow up and what they have, how they have accomplished things in their lives, I'm sure he would have been so proud of them, both of them.
The story of Milton Scott remains alive through the agents and Scott's family. Hahn later wrote a chapter dedicated to his encounter with Scott in a memoir, but he says there's nothing he would or can say to the family.
There's nothing that was going to bring him back, and there's nothing going to calm her down or give her any peace and quiet or anything like that.
Scott Jr. says his family would have questions to ask Hahn if the opportunity came up. But for now, using his voice to tell his truth is an avenue he will take.
I feel like the story needs to be told. It has to be told. For me, that is closure. I can't imagine any other form of closure other than having a story told.
Maria Pham, LSU Cold Case Project.